now.
Welcome to Burnt Out. The Burnt Out podcast shares the stories of firefighters, emergency personnel, and other first responders around the world to create a pathway to save lives. The stories you will hear are real and may be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. And now I'd like to introduce you to your hosts for Burnt Out, Skip O and Jeff the Old Guy.
Thank you, Sean, for that great introduction. We'd like to welcome to everybody to MyPodcast.Media. We're here just to help first responders get the help that they need and guide them to a pathway to recovery. But we have some great sponsors that Jeff, our other host, is going to tell you about.
Hey, thank you, Skip. I'd like to give a shout out to Throttle and Thrive with Shawn and Thompson. And if you'd like to see other sponsors, please tune into our burnoutpodcast.org page. That's www.burnoutpodcast.org for more sponsors.
Thank you, Jeff. And I'd like to welcome Shavonne Thompson on here. Shavonne, I'm going to let you tell a little bit about your background, and then we're going to go into what you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you, Skip. And thank you, Jeff, for the introduction. So I'm Shavonne Thompson. I'm based out of Los Angeles, but I actually grew up about an hour north of LA in the city of Ventura. Just kind of grew up normal middle-class family and then came to Los Angeles in 2004, went to USC for school, studied engineering, graduated from there and got a job full-time in construction. So I've actually been working in construction for the past 13 years. I'm currently a superintendent and I've been working on the LAX project, and I've worked day shift and night shift, all kinds of different shifts at the airport. And somewhere along the way in there, I got sober when I was 27. I'm 37 now. And when I was 27, I was just done. I'd known for a long time I'd had a drinking problem, and a lot of different things happened. And I just put that shovel down and stopped digging. So sobriety has been a big, big part of my story and has led me to what I'm doing today, which is launching a treatment center. So the past 18 months has been me working both jobs, wearing many different hats, not just a hard hat in construction out in the field with the steel-toed boots and the vest and driving the truck, but then switching gears and coming home and putting on the founder hat and launching a treatment center from the ground up. So it's been a really exciting adventure and a lot has happened. I'm excited to share all about it.
Shavonne, it sounds like you're a busy person. First thing, I can relate with you in recovery and being a recovering alcoholic. That's great. The second thing, I love that where your heart is and what you're doing. Could you tell our listeners out there a little bit more detailed about your treatment facility? It's Throttle and Thrive. Is that correct?
Yes, it's Throttle and Thrive. It's a detox and 6-bed men's treatment center, specially designed for first responders and veterans. So we're a dual diagnosis facility. Primarily, we focus on addiction, but secondarily, and it's a very, very close second, is post-traumatic stress. Healing it, resolving it, looking at different modalities, and a lot more than just talk therapy. Especially for men, I believe that talk therapy is it's not enough. Granted, there are amazing talk therapy modalities, EMDR being one of them. Of course, we're going to be doing that. But there's other treatments that are available that I've been researching and looking into. TMS is one of them. So transcranial magnetic stimulation. From the testimonies that I've listened to, I have heard amazing results. So that's a non-pharmaceutical, non-surgical form of treatment in which the brain is stimulated with a machine, and the brain waves essentially are stimulated so that they can get back to normal function. And what I've heard a lot is that with PTS, the processing kind of slows down because the brain has gone through traumatic experiences, or similarly with TBI, traumatic brain injury, the brain is actually injured and it's not able to process the information as quickly as it should or when it would under a healthy condition. So through taking various scans and then administering the treatment of TMS, we can actually specifically target those points in the brain which have been slowed down for whatever reason and get them back to a healthy operating state. And that will really help our clients be able to live just a more cohesive life with less stress and less inability to just deal with day-to-day functions. So I'm excited to see some great results.
Well, I tell you, thank God you're willing to go through all that, because I'm an old guy and that's complicated. So I'm glad you did the research and found out what's going on. But I just want to give a shout out to our good friend Adam Johnson. It was Adam. He called me, and he's a San Diego, a retired firefighter from San Diego. And he's been in recovery too. And he called me and said, "Hey, I want you to meet somebody." We started talking, and then Adam connected us. And then Shavonne came a sponsor of FDIC here in Indianapolis, Indiana, that's coming up at the end of April. How was your meeting with Adam, and how'd that transpire exactly?
It was great. So a couple of weeks ago, I got invited to go to a recovery event from some friends that I know in the industry. And something just told me, like, you need to go. And of course, it wasn't on a convenient day or at a convenient time. And I had to drive a little bit, sort of all of those excuses that a typical alcoholic, so I'm an alcoholic in recovery, the typical excuses of, I don't really want to, but something told me that I really needed to go. So I showed up, and one of my friends was there. His name is Mike, and we were chatting, and I hadn't seen him in a little bit. And since then is when I had decided to niche down and focus specifically on first responders and veterans and not the general population. And that really sparked something in Mike. And he said, "Oh, hey, you've got to talk to this guy, Adam. Let me get you connected to him." And so he gave me Adam's phone number. And then I just reached out, and Adam and I got on the phone, and he shared some of his story. And I was able to listen to Skip, the podcast, of course, that you recorded with Adam, and just get more information with him. And so Adam is working in recovery. And obviously he was in the fire service for many, many years. And he loved everything that I was doing. So, of course, I invited him for a tour. So he got to see Throttle and Thrive in the raw stages as we are still putting everything together. But he came, and he even joked with me. He's like, "Oh, I just want to relapse so I can come here." I'm like, no, you can't relapse. You can come visit anytime. I had to peel him away from the windows because the views here of the ocean are incredible. And so we just got to hang out for the better half of a day and eat and show them around the facility and talk about what works really well with first responders and specifically firemen, and maybe what not to do and how to incorporate different things into the program overall. So we had a great visit, and I look forward to seeing him again soon at FDIC.
She said ocean views.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The best ocean views.
I like
Our
that.
living room has 6 or 7 giant glass pane windows. So it's basically a panoramic view of the ocean on the cliff, where more or less like a short walk down to the beach. You got to kind of scale down a cliff. But it's one of the reasons that I chose this house. I feel like this house was designed to be a treatment center. The different rooms and the bathrooms and the setup, almost every room has a view. The only room that really doesn't is the IMS room. But pretty much other than that.
What is the IMS room?
Incident of Medical Services. So that's where our clients will meet with the doctor, and that's where we administer medication as well.
Awesome.
So
Do you take reservations?
They don't spend too much time in that room. So
I'm really curious about this TMS. That's the first time I've heard about this. And it's definitely sparked some interest in my area of the world too. How long does it take for a treatment like this to go, and what's your success rate on that, if there's such a way of calculating that?
The treatments are about 30 minutes, and it's 5 times a week for 5 weeks. And then from there, it tapers down. The ideal treatment is 36 treatments. We won't be able to do that in a typical 30-day window, but if a client is able to stay longer, then we would. But our goal is to get them kickstarted into just healthier brain waves, and then hopefully set them up with someone locally once they go back home that can continue treatment. But even if they don't complete all 36, every treatment stacks on top of the previous one, in which they get better and better. So think about like physical therapy to an extent, or even working out. So you might not get the biggest biceps on day one, but if you consistently do it over and over and over again, you're going to increase your muscle strength. So similar. Yeah. What we'll see for the initially is actually a decrease in depression. That's one of the things that for most people will go away or lessen the quickest, or is most noticeable. And for everyone, it's different. It's, of course, not a magic pill. It's not a cure-all. It's not going to work for everyone across the board. But for most people, we're looking at least 50, if not up to 80% of people will see some sort of improvement. And the severity or significance will differ.
That's good numbers. Those are good numbers.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. I like that. Oh, cool. Well, thank
And
you.
the great thing about it is it's non-surgical, it's non-pharmaceutical. If it doesn't work for someone, the only thing that they have lost is time. That's it. They sat in a chair for 30 minutes.
You lost a lot more than that prior to that.
Yeah.
I think you
Yeah,
give a
it's
little
not gonna
more.
hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have negative side effects. It's not going to hurt anyone.
Well, Shavonne, I want to ask are you offering like EMDR and other things on top of that too?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm working on hiring the staff. This month of April it's almost, in my mind, it's already April, but technically it's still March. But over the next month, I'm focused mainly on hiring. So I need to hire the majority of the staff, and I'm in conversations with an LMFT, and she's awesome. And she does EMDR, and she's well trained and has experience with first responders as well. So, yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your story, how you got to the point where you decided it was time for you to be sober?
Oh, yeah.
I love these stories.
Sure. Let me know if I ramble on too long. So I started drinking at 13. My parents would always go to bed early, and I would stay up with my older brother. He's 2 years and 9 months older than me. And one day he pulled a whiskey bottle out of his closet and he said, "Here, try some of this." And there was, I don't know, 3, maybe 4 shots of whiskey, warm whiskey in the bottom of this bottle. And I just chugged the whole thing. I mean, I was an alcoholic, like straight out of the gate, and got pretty drunk, at 13 and ran around the block a couple times barefoot in my pajamas. And I was like, "Whoa, this is so fun." And then I think I threw up and passed out on the floor and woke up in the morning. And my mom was like, "Oh, how cute. Shavonne slept in Nicholas's room." She grew up pretty sheltered, and my mom just had no idea what was going on, not even a slightest clue. And then about 6 months later, my brother introduced me to smoking weed. We were smoking swag out of a pipe, in the orchard next to our house where we grew up. And that was really fun. And then he started selling drugs, and that was even more fun because I would just go along for the ride. So I lived a double life, though. On one hand, I was, using and drinking and partying and making out with all my brother's friends and that whole thing. And on the other hand, I was getting straight A's in school. I was playing soccer. I was in National Charity League and later a debutante and all kinds of hoity-toity things my mom is into. And so I did graduate high school with, straight A's and got accepted to go to USC. But was, smoking and partying and drinking and just having fun. And I just thought everything was normal. And then I went to college, and then alcohol was a lot easier to get because in high school, alcohol was definitely harder to get a hold of. But then in college, my drinking got a lot worse, just a lot worse. I think I was about 21 and I realized I don't drink like regular people. And there was actually about a month, maybe 3 weeks, a month, somewhere in there where after one particular bender, I said, "I'm not going to drink again." And I stopped drinking and I just white knuckled it. And then I started to feel better. And so, of course, as soon as I felt, better after a month, I went back to drinking and forgot all about why I had quit drinking. And alcoholism being a progressive disease, it got worse. And at that point, I started to try to control my drinking. I tried to count how many drinks I had. I tried to only get, a buzz and like have fun, but not get blacked out. But I could not control the getting blacked out. And I could never just get that kind of fun, a little bit drunk feeling. It was going from slightly buzzed to blacked out. And that started to become a problem. But I was still able to maintain pretty decent grades in college. I was able to graduate undergrad. I stayed for a master's also in civil engineering. I studied abroad in Spain. I'm a very high functioning drunk is how I like to put it. So I'm very determined. I can get things done. I can show up for the most part. Although I do remember in college, there was one specific class and the professor said, if you miss any of the quizzes, you can make them up, except for this one quiz. You can't miss this one quiz. It's really important. And I think I missed it. I showed up like an hour late because I was so hungover from drinking the night before. It was a Friday morning, like 8 a.m. engineering class. Awful. And then there was, I think in about 2009, I went to Vegas, and my Vegas trips were pretty epic. Southwest Airlines, you can check 2 bags for free. So I would bring literally a whole bag of booze in one suitcase, and then a bag of clothes and shoes and bathing suits and that kind of thing. And we'd go out in the summer with a bunch of friends, and I would literally drink a whole bottle of champagne by myself. And I think I'd give my friends a bottle for them to drink. But before going to the pool, not eating breakfast, and then go to the pool and drink all day. And after a couple of days of that, I lost some friends after that trip. I was so drunk at dinner that I not only couldn't speak or eat or hardly sit up, but my sister had to pay for my dinner and was like, "You're so embarrassing." And a lot of those people on that trip didn't want to talk to me. I had to make amends to a couple of them later on. And so I quit drinking after that trip for about maybe 3 months. But it was, again, white knuckling it, isolating, not having any fun, just hunkering at home and only going to work and the gym and back home. And that was it. And that was really miserable. And then one day my roommate had some buddies over. I think it was a poker night. I hardly remember. They were like, "Here, you want a beer?" And I was like, "Sure, beer sounds great." And I don't even remember how I went from one beer to back to blacking out, every weekend and drinking every day. And so that was right around the time I graduated college. And then I started working full-time in construction. So I didn't have to study anymore. I just had to physically show up for work. I had a paycheck, and I had all these new friends at work who also lived in the Hermosa Beach area and wanted to go drinking all the time. And then it was really off to the races. So I did a lot of drinking and a lot more blacking out, and was just a complete mess. I mean, debauchery and just a complete mess. And looking back, what I was searching for is just, I wanted to be loved. I wanted people to see me. I wanted to be known. I wanted to have community and friends and family. And I just wanted to have connection with people. And I didn't realize that I could have that without drinking. And so things continued to get worse. Relationships continued to get worse. And I found myself just surrounded by a bunch of really shallow people. And after a particularly bad relationship with a guy and breaking up with him and finding out he was a big cheater and a big liar and not at all who he said he was, that was in like the November timeframe of 2012. I said, I'm just not going to focus on dating, and I'm just going to be with my family for the holidays, and I'm just done with dating. And then someone reached out to me that I had gone to college with, and I'd sort of lost touch with him. He had had a serious girlfriend when we were in college, but they'd since broken up, and he reached out around Christmas time. And so we started dating. And about a month into our relationship, I got really drunk at a charity event of all things, and called him that night, blacked out. And then the next morning woke up, and he told me that he wasn't going to talk to me if I was going to drink like that. And he didn't want anything to do with me. And basically hung up the phone, and I had an epiphany from God, and heard in a non-audible, but just that knowing sense, heard from God that I could either get help or I would lose everything that's important to me. I was going to lose my car. I was probably going to go to jail. I was definitely going to get fired from work. I was going to lose the few friends I still had, and definitely this guy that I just started dating that at the time I thought I was going to marry. He was definitely going to dump me, and it was going to hurt a lot worse than the other men that had broken up with me for my drinking. And so I just surrendered in that moment and said, okay, I want to get help. And I had no idea what help looked like. And I just got up and I pulled myself together and I went to work like I always did, hungover on Monday morning. And at lunch, I drove off site and called that boyfriend and said, hey, I think I have a drinking problem and I think I need to get help. Well, he was an angel in flesh, and turns out he was 14 years sober through Narcotics Anonymous, and he knew right where to take me. And so 2 weeks later, we finally made it to an AA meeting. So I did white knuckle it for about 2 weeks. I think that day I went home from work and I gave all of my booze to my neighbor. He was really excited about that. But I gave all the booze away and I said, I'm never going to drink, and I really mean it. And then 2 weeks later, we finally made it to an AA meeting. Now, why it took him 2 weeks to bring me to a meeting, I don't know. But at that meeting, it was the Alano Club in Hermosa Beach, which is still such an amazing place for me. And I walked in, and of course, he introduced me as a newcomer. And so after the meeting, we said the serenity prayer, and a bunch of women came up to me and gave me their phone numbers and hugged me. And next thing I knew, I was crying, and I just knew that I was where I was supposed to be. And I don't cry very easily. So that was like, okay, something's going on here. And I connected with those women, and they invited me to a Tuesday night meeting. And so I showed up to the Tuesday night meeting, and then I showed up to the Friday night meeting. I just kept showing up, and I just did what they said. I got a sponsor. We started reading the big book. We started doing the step work, and I just did it. I committed to it, and I did it. First, it was kind of out of fear. I was afraid that I wasn't getting sober for real this time, and I was probably more afraid I was going to get dumped. And so, yeah, I held on to that program.
Well, one thing, Shavonne, I want to applaud you for your willingness and what you've done so far to get where you're at. Another thing, we can know there's something up there, and we can believe something's there. Real quick, if you want to share a little bit about relationship with a higher power, would you do that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a Christian household. My mom's parents were practicing Christians. And so we went to their church. And so I was, baptized as a little kid and went to Sunday school. And I always liked church. I always thought it was fun and nice. And we always went to breakfast afterwards and had a good time. And in middle school, I, sometimes went to different youth group events. And for the most part, it was fun. It was more social than anything else. And then in high school, I wasn't really too much involved in church, just because I was more involved in chasing after boys and going to parties and playing sports and things like that. But I did do the Alpha program. A lot of churches do it, and it's an exploratory course. You go once a week, usually for dinner during the week, and they feed you and you watch a video, and then you're in a group and you talk about different spiritual things. And it's just a safe place for non-believers or even people of different religions to come and explore Christianity. And that was helpful. And I started to learn things that I hadn't learned before. But then I went to college, and I think I sent one email to one church of, hey, I want to come join your church. And they never emailed me back. So the next 3 years, I just spent drinking and partying and going to school and joining a sorority and going to football games and all that. And then I was at a fraternity event, and it was the Christian fraternity. My sorority did a lot of stuff with them. And one of the guys I had some classes with, and he just invited me to church. And I said, okay, sure. And he's like, oh, it's Sunday night. I'm like, oh, that's weird, but okay, I'll go Sunday night. That doesn't interfere with my Saturday night drinking. So sure. And it was like nothing I'd ever seen before. This was Mosaic Church in about 2003. And they met at the Mayan nightclub in downtown LA. And I had never been to a church in a nightclub. So I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And they had fog machines, and they had people up on stage painting, and they had a really cool live band. And then the pastor was amazing. And so God started to do something in my life during that time. I was still living that double life. On one hand, I was out on the weekends partying, sleeping around, drinking, all of that. On the other days when I would, show up, I was in Bible studies and I was learning, and they were just loving me. These people accepted me right where I was, and they loved me, and they were fun. And so I started to just learn more about God. And I've always had a good understanding of God, that God is good, that God is loving. And so that has always really helped. And I grew up with really amazing parents, and they loved me, and they did a really great job. So I was very blessed that I didn't grow up with abuse or trauma or seeing just the evils of this world. And I think that really helped shape my view of God. And then when things really started to change is when I got sober. So when I got sober with that boyfriend, he was down in Orange County, and we started going to a church down there, and they were doing a go through the Bible series. And so I was able to get this whole picture of the story of God, and everything finally came together. And I was able to understand how all of these seemingly disjointed stories all came together into this larger story. And then after we broke up, I went to some other churches in LA, and then I found myself at a church called Vintage in Santa Monica. And that's where I really started to understand the Holy Spirit. And that's when a lot of things started to shift and started to change. And the people that I started to meet And I was able to go deeper into Christianity and really understand things from a different level and understand that we can hear from God and we can discern the voice of God. And I started to meet people with a lot deeper faith than I had. And then different things started to shift, and different things started to happen. And I became more connected to God and more just closer.
I know we're getting ready to run out of time here. I do want to ask, how can we get a hold of you? How can somebody get a hold of you at Throttle and Thrive if they need help?
Absolutely. So they can call me or text me. My phone number is 805-701-1309. They can also go to www.throttleandthrive.com. There's different ways to get a hold of us there. Or they can email me at info@throttleandthrive.com.
Somebody's listening to this podcast right now. They might be sitting in the patrol car at the fire station. They might be in Afghanistan or somewhere in this world. They're lost. They don't believe in God, don't believe nothing from all the trauma. You got 30 seconds to talk to them. What are you going to say? Go.
There's help out there. There's an amazing community of people just like you. They've been where you're at. They know how you're feeling and they can help you. All you've got to do is make that call, pick up that 1,000-pound phone and reach out for help, especially first responders. The peer support's amazing. Most of the people that lead peer supports are sober themselves. They've been through trauma. They know what it's like and they're on the other side. There's hope and there's help. Just reach out.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing, is there a verse or a quote that when you get down or you're getting attacked or the darkness is coming back, that you always resonates in your mind that pops in when that stuff happens?
I like to remember, don't drink no matter what. It's just not an option. And that I'm not always going to feel this way. No matter how I'm feeling, no matter how down I get, I'm not always going to feel this way. Tomorrow will be different, hopefully better. And I like to remember that it's not about me. I'm here to serve others, and it's not about me.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you coming on here, sharing your heart, and just being who you are and not veering from the path. If you want to get a hold of Shavonne and the treatment facility, it opens in May. I think middle of May is what you're shooting for, isn't it, Shavonne?
We're shooting for May 1st. We should be licensed the middle of April, and then I'm going to work on training the staff. And then May 1st is our target launch date for accepting clients.
Do you have a waiting list already?
Skip keeps telling me he says I better hurry up and open because he wants to send people over here. So
I kind of want to take a jaunt myself, to be honest with you. Yeah, I'm curious about the TMS.
And if anyone wants to come out, we're hosting open house tours Saturday, April 15th, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. and Tuesday, April 18th, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. If you would like to come, you are more than welcome to come for a tour. Get a hold of me, send me an email or go to our website, fill out a contact form and just say, I want to come to the open house.
And what's your website address again?
Throttleandthrive.com.
Boom.
Thanks again, Shavonne. And we'd like to thank everybody for listening to us. Go to our website, burnoutpodcast.org. If you want to get a hold of Shavonne, click on the link with her and you can find more information about Throttle and Thrive. Also, when you go home tonight, shut your phone off. Turn the scanner off and get some sleep. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Burnout. Burnout is brought to you by the Worldwide Peer Support. You can visit Burnout Podcast at burntoutpodcast.org or visit Worldwide Peer Support at worldwidepeersupport.org. Your hosts for the Burnt Out Podcast are Skip O and Jeff the Old Guy. Produced by Sean P. Neal. A MyPodcast.Media production.